All right, let's jump right into this explainer and look at the massive generational shift that's currently shaking up our global financial infrastructure. If you follow the financial sector at all, you already know we are right in the thick of a massive transition. We're moving away from those traditional legacy banking systems and stepping fully into the era of Web3 and decentralized networks. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how this evolution is playing out, and specifically how the fundamental building blocks of money, data, and trust are changing right before our eyes. You know, there's this really fascinating truth about economic history. The most massive, systemic changes, they almost always happen invisibly, just humming along right beneath the surface of the economy. By the time a totally new financial paradigm becomes obvious to the everyday person, the foundational architecture has already been fully built out. And make no mistake, we are living through one of those exact moments right now. What's really incredible is that we're watching these twin pillars of change simultaneously rebuild finance as we know it. On one side, you have artificial intelligence, which is fundamentally shifting how we process information and intelligence. But on the exact opposite side, you have blockchain, which is fundamentally rewiring the very concept of ownership. When you smash these two forces together, they aren't just creating a couple of cool new tech products. No, they are literally rebuilding the entire global financial system from the ground up.
Okay, let's move into part one, the generational shift, apps versus infrastructure. To really grasp where finance is heading, we have to separate what sits on the surface from the plumbing that runs underneath. Think about it like this. Everyone loves to chase the hottest new consumer app, right? But apps change every single year. The real revolution, the stuff that literally shifts global economies, happens down in the infrastructure, because infrastructure lasts for decades. Look at legacy giants like Visa, Stripe, or Google. They didn't just build popular apps, they built the actual rails that modern commerce runs on. This whole transition to Web3, it's entirely about laying down the next generation of those rails.
So the takeaway here is that if you want to understand the future, you kind of have to tune out the noise of the daily headlines. You need to follow the underlying systems. Specifically, watch the systems that move three critical things: money, data, and trust. Now, in traditional finance, these three elements are totally siloed, locked down, and controlled by centralized authorities. But in Web3, they become programmable, fully decentralized, and ultimately user-owned.
All right, moving right along to part two, the Web3 intersection.
So let's look at Wi-Fi as an objective case study of how these traditionally isolated financial systems are attempting to converge into one single unified ecosystem. The stated vision here is to position the platform directly at the intersection of several massive multi-billion-dollar industries. Historically, things like banking, crypto exchanges, travel booking, and AI tools have all lived in their own completely separate bubbles. The goal outlined with Wi-Fi is to completely collapse those silos, creating a single layer of infrastructure where value just flows freely between them without any of the usual friction. Just imagine having one completely frictionless interface for a second. You have this unified balance sitting right in the center, and radiating out from it are all these distinct financial actions that previously would have required you to open 5 different apps. You've got travel booking, crypto spending, traditional banking, your rewards, and AI finance tools all functioning seamlessly in one place. It's painting this really vivid picture where the future of finance absolutely doesn't live in isolated silos. It becomes one tightly interconnected web. And when you actually break down what that convergence entails, it covers a staggering amount of ground. We're talking about smashing together banking and remittance, crypto exchanges and Web3 infrastructure, travel and commerce, AI finance, creator economies, and digital identity. So why does this actually matter for your day-to-day life? Well, if this vision for the infrastructure succeeds, the friction of moving your own money between a bank account, a digital wallet, and making an international purchase drops to absolute zero. It's the promise of true digital ownership paired with actual everyday utility.
That brings us to part three, the layers of Wi-Fi.
So we need to break down the actual mechanics of this new Web3 infrastructure so we can grasp how it operates under the hood, because it's definitely not just a single piece of software, it's a multi-layered ecosystem. To understand the very first layer, we have to look at this concept of the DO bank. Basically, a DO bank is a unified gateway blending traditional finance, or TradFi, and Web3 on-chain finance into one single account. The specific platform we're looking at here, called D1, isn't just another digital bank like a Chime or a Revolut. It's built as a bridge specifically designed to connect two entirely different financial worlds.
If you look at it structurally, the architecture is broken down into 3 super clean layers. First up, at the top, you have the service layer. This is D1. that user-facing gateway we were just talking about. Second, sitting right underneath that is the economic layer. This is driven by DubFi and energy tokens, which are there to power the rewards and the community incentives. And finally, at the very bottom, forming the bedrock, is the infrastructure layer, which is known as WeChain. This is the actual foundational blockchain technology supporting the whole shebang.
Which leads us to part 4, the future of ownership. All right, this brings us to the final and honestly, probably the most important philosophical shift that ties this whole explainer together. We've talked a lot about the tech and the tools, but let's look at the actual outcome here. Ultimately, the biggest shift happening right now isn't the technology itself, it is ownership. Think about it. In traditional finance, the institutions own your data. They hold your money, and they control your access. Web3 infrastructure fundamentally flips that dynamic on its head. On-chain ownership means you actually hold your own digital assets. It changes the power dynamics of the global economy, pushing control right back into the hands of the individual.
And just to put the sheer scale of this disruption into perspective, the combined markets of global travel, asset management, digital identity, and AI finance, that represents a $100 trillion economy. Let that number sink in. The Web3 infrastructure being built today is not aiming for some small, niche corner of the internet. It is aiming to become the foundational operating system for a massive global economic engine.
Because at the end of the day, the future of money isn't going to be achieved just by creating a slightly faster or a slightly prettier digital banking app. It will only be realized by building fundamentally better, decentralized infrastructure. A true financial operating system that connects absolutely everything seamlessly, securely, and with true user ownership at its absolute core.
So, as we wrap up this explainer on the rapidly shifting landscape of global finance, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative challenge. As traditional banking and Web3 continue on this collision course, you really have to ask yourself, what financial infrastructure am I positioned around? Are you relying entirely on the legacy systems of the past? Or are you preparing yourself for the interconnected, decentralized operating systems of the future? It's a vital question to ponder as we watch this whole new financial era unfold.